How good is the standing hip thrust? So one of these new in vogue pieces in the industry is a standing hip thrust. Booty Builder has one. Theirs is certainly the most famous. I'm going to show you the version that I have today and give you my review of it. So as I've said here before on this channel, like, I'm not sponsored by any company. I have no agenda to sell you anything. I get nothing from this, as opposed to many people who review stuff out there. They are sponsored by a company, they work for a company, and they have an agenda, regardless of any unbiased opinion of the equipment itself. They want to sell you. I have no objective to do that. Standing hip thrust, based out of a company in Texas. So I've had this machine a couple of months. I'm going to show you my review of it. This is the traditional way you would use it. This particular machine has band pegs, which is cool. The problem is, when you use the band pegs as they are, it doesn't really work with the movement because the vector of force is not where you want it to be. You can do two different movements with this machine. An RDL, this is kind of an RDL where you grab it high and your upper body is really close to the bar. And this right here is more of a true hip thrust where you're sitting back in the movement and you're thrusting forward. I prefer the first one because it gives you more range of motion. This is the only way I like using the machine. Heavy bands, I've got it attached to a sled outside the machine because the vector of force is actually forcing me to get that top peak contraction. The purpose of a good hip thrust machine here is to really hit that end range of motion, the top third of the movement where I can contract and force my hips into full extension. And this is really the only way the movement is comfortable, I find. You have to have a ton of weight to this movement to make it effective, I find. And sometimes when you add a ton of weight, it's good at the top third where you contract, but it's actually uncomfortable on your knees to get to that top third of the position. It's just uncomfortable. So you can see this is more the hip thrust where you sit back, as opposed to the RDL movement where you stay forward and you're just hinging back and forth and you're keeping your upper body closer to the forward essence of the machine. So you can see this is the RDL movement where I'm staying forward instead of sitting back, versus the true hip thrust. This gives you much better range of motion, and you do get a decent stretch on the adductors. So again, this is the only way I prefer to use the movement because the strength curve is as it should be. It's the hardest at the top, but still this machine requires a decent amount of weight. I like to do this as a time under tension technique. I still overall definitely prefer a traditional hip thrust. This is a cool, unique machine, but different. So to sum up, I still absolutely prefer a traditional barbell hip thrust or traditional hip thrust machine where you're lying down, or where you're more in a lying position than an upright position. But done with the bands, I'd give it a B+. It's a decent movement. I would do as an accessory, not as a main movement. The issue with this machine potentially is it's very hard to load enough weight, and the strength curve is such that the only real place you're getting resistance is the end of the movement. And it's almost, when you put a ton of weight on it, it feels uncomfortable in the beginning of the movement on your knees. That's the only issue I have. And again, best for me when I use it with heavy bands like I showed you. Just because it's awkward if you put bands on the existing weight horns.